Let me ask you something. You're over 60, maybe 65 or 70. You've done your best to eat healthy. You stay active to some degree, yet you notice your strength fading, your muscle tone disappearing, your energy slipping. You might think, is this just inevitable aging doing its job? Or worse, am I doomed to be weak and frail? What if I told you, no, what the research shows that you can reverse or arrest that muscle loss, that you can regain strength, metabolic vitality, and resiliency well into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. The crucial step is to stop trusting old myths and begin working with your biochemistry, not against it. Because here's the hard truth. Losing muscle, sarcopenia, isn't just about aesthetics or mobility. It's a core driver of metabolic decline, insulin resistance, frailty, and increased risk of chronic disease. When muscle tissue shrinks, your ability to dispose of glucose is impaired. Your basal metabolic rate drops, you lose your buffer against metabolic stress. In effect, you begin sliding into a vicious cycle of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and accelerating aging. So the stakes are high. Preserving or restoring lean mass is not optional. It is foundational to healthy aging, energy, metabolic flexibility, and vitality. Today's topic is bold, over 60, reverse muscle loss now. Avoid this cheese and eat this instead. Why this framing? Because dietary choices, especially protein, dairy, insulin-stimulating foods, matter more than ever when you're older. Some foods that seem healthy may subtly drive insulin resistance or inflammation in vulnerable aging physiology. Conversely, other foods, often overlooked, can provide the anabolic stimulus your aging muscles. Here's what's really going on inside your body as you age. Then you develop anabolic resistance. Your muscles become less sensitive to protein or amino acid signals, so you need a stronger stimulus to grow. Insulin resistance impairs your body's ability to suppress muscle breakdown and regenerate tissue. Hormonal shifts, lower growth hormone, lower testosterone, estrogen, changes in IGF-1, reduce anabolic signals. Underlying stress, chronic inflammation, poor sleep, and micronutrient deficiencies further blunt your adaptive capacity. In this talk, I'll walk you through 6 science-backed insights that explain what most people get wrong and what to do differently starting today. Why healthy cheese may sometimes backfire in aging metabolism. The optimal pattern, dose, and timing of high-quality protein. The power of insulin control and fasting windows to reset muscle signaling. Leveraging resistance training as the anabolic spark. Supporting nutrients, hormones, and recovery that amplify growth. A meal template, what to eat instead of that cheese, pause timing suggestions. If this is resonating so far, hit subscribe. I post content like this every week to help you rebuild metabolism and vitality naturally. Let's dive into one of the sneakiest mistakes many older adults make, assuming all cheese is good protein and benign in aging metabolism. But here's what's really going on, and how that assumption can undermine your muscle building goals. I want you to imagine a whiteboard with 2 boxes, protein source on the left, feeding into muscle building signal on the right. Between them, there are gates, digestion, absorption, insulin signal, inflammation, metabolic stress. If any of those gates are impaired, the signal from protein to muscle gets weakened. That's exactly what happens in aging, and certain dairy or cheese choices can clog one of those gates. What cheese can do, the upside and the caveats. To be fair, cheese is a source of complete protein, i.e. all the essential amino acids. In some studies, ingestion of cheese or cheese-like dairy has increased muscle protein synthesis, MPS. In one trial, 30 g of protein from cheese increased MPS, so the kinetics were slower than milk. At QResearchBank.eau. And this is critical, the effect depends heavily on the type processing and metabolic context of the person ingesting it. Young versus older, insulin sensitivity versus resistance. In younger, metabolically healthy adults, cheese can be part of a muscle-building diet. But in an aging insulin-resistant system, the story changes. Why some cheeses become traps in aging physiology. Insulin genetic dairy components, hidden insulin push, dairy proteins, especially whey, tend to provoke a disproportionately high insulin response relative to their glycemic load. In other words, you may eat cheese with very few carbs, but if the protein fraction is insulinogenic, it can push insulin upward, which in a person with aging insulin resistance, that extra insulin input can blunt lipolysis, fat burning, reinforce fat storage, and interfere with metabolic flexibility. That's a bad combo when your goal is fat loss and muscle gain. 2, slow or suboptimal amino acid kinetics. Cheese is often rich in casein or hydrolyzed casein forms depending on aging and processing. These are slower digesting proteins. In younger people, slower absorption may help sustain amino acid levels, but in older adults facing anabolic resistance, the slow trickle may not cross the anabolic threshold needed to stimulate muscle growth. In one crossover study, cheddar cheese released amino acids slowly, achieving a sustained but lower peak compared to milk. The anabolic signaling mTORC1 persisted longer, but at a lower intensity, MDPI. If your muscles are already dull to the signal, a weak, slow wave might not be enough. 3, matrix effects, fat, sodium, inflammation. Cheese is a complex food matrix. It carries saturated fat, sodium, sometimes additives, and variable degrees of processing or aging. In older individuals, these extras can exacerbate low-grade inflammation, oxidative stress, or endothelial dysfunction, all of which blunt anabolic responsiveness. For example, inflammation raises cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6, which tilt the balance toward muscle breakdown and reduce sensitivity to insulin and growth cues. If you eat a cheese that provokes more inflammation, e.g. through additives or poor quality, you weaken one of your anabolic gates. 4, overconsumption and caloric drag. Because cheese is calorie dense, it's easy to overconsume, particularly in contexts of less movement, as often occurs over 60. That excess energy can push total calories upward, raising insulin and driving fat gain, which further worsens insulin resistance. In this scenario, the protein benefit is overshadowed by metabolic deterioration. The cheese mistake in practice is, let me paint a real-world example. Mr. Ahmed, age 68, reads that eat more protein, so he begins consuming large amounts of processed cheddar cheese. He pairs it with bread, tomatoes, and calls it lunch. Over months, his weight creeps up, his waist expands, and his clothes tighten despite his healthy protein focus. What went wrong? The processed cheddar delivered protein, yes, but also saturated fat, sodium, and metabolic drag. The insulinogenic nature of dairy exacerbated his already fragile glucose control. The slow amino acid release might never have crossed the anabolic threshold strongly enough to stimulate his aging muscles. He overate calories. Instead of fueling muscle, he reinforced insulin resistance and fat gain, the very opposite of what he intended. Behaviorally actionable, avoid this. Replace with that guidance. Avoid minimize heavily processed or ultra-aged cheeses with additives, emulsifiers, or high sodium. Over-reliance on cheese as your primary protein source, i.e. don't replace meat, eggs, legumes entirely with cheese. Large quantities in a single sitting because of caloric density and insulin stress. Better alternatives, the eat this instead pivot. Choose fresh, minimally processed dairy if tolerated, e.g. plain Greek yogurt, full-fat unsweetened, Sky or Quark. These have better kinetics and fewer additives. Or go with clean animal proteins that have faster and stronger anabolic response, eggs, lean poultry, fish, grass-fed meats, or even high-quality whey isolates if needed. Combine your protein with low insulinogenic fats and fibrous vegetables that buffer the insulin impact. Use mixed protein sources, e.g. combining fast, slow proteins to create a synergistic bolus. Let's pick up where we left off. If you think cheese might be sabotaging your aging metabolism, now we need to understand why your muscles don't respond the same way after 60, a phenomenon called anabolic resistance, and then turn that knowledge into a precise, doable protocol. First, a simple analogy. Imagine your muscles are like a factory, and the raw material is amino acids from protein. In youth, you pour in a modest amount of materials, flip a switch, anabolic signaling, and the factory ramps up, building new muscle fibers, repairing damage. After 60, the problem is twofold. The switch is rusty and delivery is clogged. You pour in the same raw material, but the factory only works weekly because fewer materials get in and the signal to ramp production is blunted. That is anabolic resistance. Your muscles are less responsive to the same dose of protein or stimulation. What the research shows, multiple clinical and review studies define anabolic resistance as a blunted muscle protein synthesis, MPS response to the same dose of amino acids or mixed protein in older adults compared to younger ones. Frontiers, for example, in a study comparing younger and older men given 20 gg of casein protein, the older group's postprandial MPS rose by only 21% compared to 75% in younger men, i.e. a 16% lower absolute MPS rate in the older group. PLS aging is associated with reduced insulin-mediated capillary recruitment, meaning amino acids in the bloodstream have a harder time reaching muscle tissue. PubMed +2 Frontier. Also, older adults tend to extract more amino acids in the splanchnic bed, i.e. gut, liver, leaving less for peripheral muscles. PubMed obesity, sedentary behavior, and low-level inflammation further exacerbate anabolic resistance by interfering with the intercellular signaling pathways, e.g. mTOR, AKT, or increasing inhibitory signals. Frontiers. So anabolic resistance is not a myth. It's a real measurable attenuation of your muscle's ability to respond to a standard protein load. That means the same meal plan that worked at 30 or 40 won't be enough at 60. How to overcome anabolic resistance. Solutions you can act on today. Here's how to repair the switch and unclog the delivery. Raise the per meal protein threshold. Because your muscles are harder to wake up, you need a stronger stimulus. Many experts suggest 25-35 g of high-quality protein or 0.4 times 6 g body weight per meal to reliably cross that threshold. PMC POS 3 Biomed Central 3 Frontiers. Ensure you include leucine-rich sources. Leucine is especially potent in triggering mTOR and muscle protein synthesis. PMC POS 3 Frontiers. Spread these doses evenly over 3-4 meals versus heavily skewed to dinner. That avoids saturating one meal and starving others. Biomed Central. 2. Time protein around resistance activity. Just as a walk before lunch potentiates your body to use glucose better, doing a resistance set, light but purposeful, 30-60 minutes before your protein-rich meal primes your muscles to be more receptive. It improves microvascular flow and signaling sensitivity. PMC PA2 Biomed Central 2. If you can alternate meals and workouts, prioritize a protein-rich meal immediately afterward. This synergy enhances the anabolic effect. 3. Leverage fast flow proteins in a mixed amino acid shock. Using mixed sources can give both a rapid spike and sustained release. For example, combining whey fast with a modest amount of casein or even eggs slower can prolong the anabolic window. This shock may overcome the blunting. Frontiers 2. 4. Reduce insulin resistance and inflammation to clear delivery pathways. Use a modest fasting window or time-restricted eating, e.g. 14-16H fast, 8-10H eating to lower baseline insulin and improve metabolic flexibility. Choose anti-inflammatory foods, omega-3s, phytonutrients, green leafy vegetables. Minimize refined carbohydrates and processed seed oils that worsen oxidative stress. Maintain or restore weight, especially central fat, to reduce inflammatory cytokines. Use micronutrients that support endothelial health, magnesium, vitamin D, nitrates, etc. These steps help restore better capillary recruitment and amino acid delivery. 5. Stay habitually active and avoid disuse. Even low-grade movement, walking, gardening, supports muscle perfusion and counters disuse-induced anabolic resistance. PubMed POS 3 Physiopedia. If you're immobilized or sedentary due to illness, your anabolic resistance accelerates. So your movement baseline matters. 6. Monitor and adjust. Do not assume more is always better. Track your muscle strength, e.g. how your grip, squat, or push strength evolves over weeks. Adjust protein intake up or down if weight, digestion, renal status allow. If you're on medications, e.g. for kidney disease, consult your physician regarding higher protein. Let's take a step back and ask a critical question. If you're eating plenty of protein, why do your muscles still shrink? Here's what's really going on inside your body. Protein doesn't build muscle in isolation. It needs a metabolic environment that allows amino acids to reach the muscle, activate mTOR, and drive synthesis. That environment depends heavily on one hormone, insulin. Now, insulin isn't your enemy. It's essential for growth. But in the wrong context, like chronic elevation, it becomes one of the biggest blockers of muscle preservation. Think of insulin as the gatekeeper. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine insulin as a gatekeeper standing between your bloodstream and your muscle cells. When the gatekeeper is responsive, he opens the gate when amino acids and nutrients arrive, letting them enter the muscle factory, triggering repair and growth. But when the gatekeeper is tired, as happens with chronic high insulin and insulin resistance, he stops responding. The gate stays half closed. Amino acids pile up in the bloodstream, but can't get into the muscle efficiently. So even if you're eating the perfect diet, your muscle machinery can't fully activate. The physiological truth, insulin is an anabolic hormone, yes, but only when it spikes briefly and appropriately. Chronic hyperinsulinemia, however, does three damaging things in older adults. Blocks fat oxidation, your body stays in storage mode, unable to use fat for fuel, increases intramuscular fat, fat builds up inside muscle cells, further impairing insulin signaling. Suppresses autophagy. Your natural cellular repair process slows, making muscle tissues stale and metabolically less active. Aging muscles particularly vulnerable to this vicious cycle. In one recent study from the Journal of Cachexia, Sarcopenia, and Muscle 2024, researchers found that older adults with insulin resistance had 35% lower muscle protein synthesis rates than insulin-sensitive peers, even with equal protein intake. The problem wasn't the protein, it was the metabolic gate. The fix: improved insulin sensitivity, and muscle follows. When you restore insulin sensitivity, you reopen the gate, and every gram of protein you eat becomes more anabolic. Here's how. Time your meals and fasting windows. Adopt the 12-16 hour fasting window several times a week. Even modest fasting lowers fasting insulin and allows muscle cells to resensitize. For example, if you finish dinner by 7 p.m., have your first meal around 11 a.m. Fasting works not by starving you, but by restoring rhythm to insulin signaling. 2. Control carbohydrate quality and timing. Older adults often do best with carbohydrate timing. Pair carbs with protein post-workout when muscles are most insulin sensitive, and keep carbs lower at sedentary times. Avoid frequent snacking. Each snack keeps insulin elevated and the gate closed. 3. Add insulin sensitizing nutrients. Magnesium, chromium, berberine, alpha-lipoic acid, and omega-3 fatty acids all improve insulin receptor efficiency and lower inflammation. If you prefer a natural food approach, magnesium, leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, avocado, chromium, pigs, broccoli, omega-3, salmon, sardines, flax. 4. Engage your largest muscle groups daily. Even light resistance training, squats, step-ups, push-ups acts like insulin therapy. Each contraction draws glucose into the cell without needing insulin. Think of exercise as manual glucose transport. 5. Sleep and stress control. Sleep deprivation and chronic cortisol elevation both raise insulin. Getting 7-8 hours of high-quality sleep can do more for insulin sensitivity than any supplement. And if you're constantly stressed, your cortisol will sabotage your insulin, no matter how good your diet is. When you optimize insulin, you turn your meals into medicine. You'll notice your post-meal energy steadies, your waistline tightens, and over time, you begin rebuilding lean tissue because your body finally uses what you feed it. If this insight is helpful, consider subscribing. I share research-backed strategies like this every week to help you rebuild metabolic and muscular health naturally. Next, we'll go deeper into the most powerful non-nutritional lever you have, strength training, and how just 15 minutes a day can switch on muscle growth pathways, even after 70. You can eat perfectly, control insulin, and dial in your supplements. But without one essential signal, your muscles simply won't respond. That signal is mechanical tension, what we get from resistance training. Let me explain this clearly. The whiteboard analogy. Picture your muscle fibers as light switches. Protein and insulin are like the electricity. They provide the potential, but resistance training is your finger flipping the switch on. Without that signal, the current just hums in the wires, never illuminating the room. This is why older adults who rely only on diet and walking continue to lose muscle. Walking is good for the heart, but it's too gentle to flip the anabolic switch. Your muscles need brief focus resistance to remind them why they exist. What the research shows, a 2023 meta-analysis in aging research reviews found that even low-volume resistance exercise performed twice weekly increased lean mass and strength in adults over 65 by 12% within 12. Another trial from McMaster University showed that older adults performing resistance training plus 30 g of protein post-workout doubled their muscle protein synthesis compared to those who only consume protein. The takeaway is simple: food supports muscle, but movement commands it. How to start safely and effectively? 1. Frequency and duration. Aim for 2-3 full body sessions per week, lasting 50. Each session should challenge your major muscle groups: legs, back, chest, core, arms, tuning exercises that matter most. Focus on compound functional moves that train multiple joints at once: squat or sit to stand from a chair, push up on wall, counter or floor, row for pullback, resistance band or lightweight, overhead press, light dumbbells or water bottles, plank or core hold. These recruit the largest muscle fibers, the ones most vulnerable to age-related loss. 3, the 2-rep rule for intensity. Choose a weight or resistance that lets you perform 8-12 reps per set. If you could easily do more than 2 extra reps, it's too light. If you can't reach 8, it's too heavy. Perform 2 to 3 sets per movement, resting 60-90 seconds between. 4, the recovery principle. Muscles don't grow during the workout. They grow during recovery. Ensure 24-48 hours between sessions for the same muscle group, adequate sleep, hydration, and nutrient replenishment. Without recovery, exercise becomes another form of stress. 5, pair training with protein. Consume 25-35 g of protein within an hour post-workout. This maximizes the muscle protein synthesis window. Think eggs with greens, salmon with avocado, or a clean whey shake if digestion allows. Why strength training is medicine for metabolism. Resistance exercise activates AMPK and GLUT4 transporters, pulling glucose directly into muscle cells without insulin. That means every workout not only strengthens your body, it treats insulin resistance. Over time, this leads to improved glucose control, lower inflammation, and faster fat-to-fuel transitions. It also raises IGF-1, testosterone, and growth hormone naturally, restoring hormonal youthfulness without medication. Real-world example. One of my patients, Maria, age 72, began with resistance bands in her living room, 10 minutes, 3 times per week. She combined it with adequate protein and a modest fasting window. Within 3 months, her leg strength improved by 40%, her blood sugar normalized, and her energy returned. No gym, no supplements beyond food, and consistency. Her story mirrors what research confirms. It's not intensity, it's consistency. If you're finding this valuable so far, hit that like button and subscribe. I share protocols like this every week to help you rebuild muscle, metabolism, and confidence at any age. Let me start with a simple truth. You don't grow when you train, you grow when you recover. That might sound counterintuitive, but it's rooted in biochemistry. Every rep you perform creates micro damage. Every night of good sleep and every calm, low cortisol morning rebuilds that tissue stronger. If you miss the recovery window, if you're chronically stressed, underslept, or hormonally out of rhythm, your body can't complete the repair cycle. Let's unpack what that means inside your physiology. The hormone symphony that builds or breaks muscle. Imagine your hormones as a 4-piece orchestra. Cortisol, the drummer, keeping rhythm and stress tempo. Growth hormone, GH, the trumpet, blasting signals for repair. Testosterone in men and women, the baseline for strength and drive. Insulin and IGF-1, the strings, weaving in energy and growth. When all play in harmony, muscle grows, fat burns, recovery happens. But if cortisol starts drumming out of control, say from chronic stress, sleep loss, or undereating, the entire rhythm collapses. Here's what the research shows. Cortisol excess increases muscle protein breakdown and inhibits MPS, muscle protein synthesis. Even moderate elevation over weeks can reduce lean mass by 5%. Growth hormone and IGF-1, critical for tissue repair, decline 30-40% after age 60, but sleep and fasting can double their natural output. Testosterone and DHEA fall gradually with age, but resistance training and adequate dietary fat, especially monounsaturated fats, can restore them naturally. Chronic inflammation, often driven by poor sleep or gut imbalance, suppresses anabolic hormones and mitochondrial repair. So you're not just fighting aging, you're often fighting stress chemistry. What to do about it? One, prioritize deep, high-quality sleep. Sleep is the most anabolic supplement on earth, and it's free. During deep sleep, especially stages 3 and 4, your body releases most of its GH. Here's how to enhance it. Avoid eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. Keep your room cool. Dim lights 1 hour before sleep to trigger melatonin. Maintain consistent sleep and wake times. The 2023 Frontiers in Endocrinology review found that adults sleeping under 6 hours had significantly lower GH and testosterone levels independent of age or activity. To manage stress like a metabolic variable, we often talk about calories, macros, and exercise, but stress load can override them all. Chronic cortisol makes you insulin resistant and catabolic, muscle wasting. Simple tools. Breathwork. Try 5 minutes of slow nasal breathing twice a day. Inhale 4S, exhale 6S. Sunlight exposure early in the day resets your circadian rhythm, lowering cortisol at night. Nature walks, 20 minutes a day, have measurable effects on cortisol reduction. When cortisol stabilizes, muscle synthesis rebounds because the body finally feels safe to rebuild. Free your hormones, not just your macros. Healthy fats are hormone precursors. Without them, you can't make testosterone or estrogen. Include olive oil, avocado, egg yolks, wild salmon, grass-fed butter, nuts. Also include micronutrients like zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D, all cofactors in hormone synthesis. Studies show older adults with low vitamin D have significantly lower muscle strength and testosterone. 4, reintroduce strategic rest days. Your muscles need recovery as much as stimulation. Alternate high-effort days with low-effort ones, like walking, yoga, or mobility drills. This oscillation keeps inflammation down and performance up. Real-world story. Take Mr. Lee, 66 years old, retired engineer. He did everything right, protein resistance training, fasting, yet his progress plateaued. When we examined his sleep patterns, we found chronic insomnia and elevated late-night cortisol. Once he began a nightly wind-down ritual, no screens after 9 p.m., chamomile tea, breathing drills, his sleep deepened. Within 6 weeks, his strength and body composition improved again without changing his workouts or diet. That's how powerful hormonal recovery really is. If this resonated with you, give the video a like. It helps more people discover evidence-based tools for metabolic renewal. Let's talk about the part that everyone loves, the food. But before we dive into what to eat, let's clear one critical misconception. Not all protein foods are created equal, especially after. Here's what's really going on inside your body. After the age of 60, your muscles develop what scientists call anabolic resistance. It means your muscle cells don't respond to protein as efficiently as they used to. You can eat the same chicken breast or Greek yogurt as you did in your 30s, but build half the muscle from it. That's why it's not just about eating more protein, it's about eating the right kind of protein at the right times and supporting it with the right metabolic conditions. The hidden problem, insulin and dairy-driven inflammation. Now, earlier we talked about avoiding certain cheeses, and here's why. Most ultra-processed cheeses, the kind that come in slices, spreads, or pre-shredded bags, are insulin-stimulating foods that raise inflammation and blunt muscle repair. They're not just dairy, they're a mix of denatured casein proteins, industrial oils, and emulsifiers. These additives activate mTOR and insulin simultaneously, sending a confusing signal to the body: store fat, not build muscle. The 2024 American Journal of Clinical Nutrition Review found that ultra-processed dairy foods increased insulin and inflammatory markers like IL-6 and CRP by 18 to 25% in older adults compared to whole dairy sources like Parmesan or plain yogurt. So the simple rule: avoid processed cheese, eat fermented, high-protein dairy instead. That means choose cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, or aged Parmesan. Avoid cheese slices, spreads, and cheese-flavored snacks. The muscle-building swap that actually works. Instead of that processed cheese sandwich, here's a muscle-friendly breakfast. 3 pasture-raised eggs for leucine and choline. Half cup Greek yogurt for slow-digesting casein protein. Handful of blueberries for antioxidants to reduce exercise-induced inflammation. Black coffee or green tea to enhance AM fat oxidation. This combination delivers roughly 30-35 grams of complete protein. The threshold research shows is necessary to overcome anabolic resistance. In fact, studies from the Journal of Nutrition 2023 demonstrate that adults over 60 need at least 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal to trigger muscle synthesis effectively. That's double what many people get at breakfast. Timing matters as much as food. Here's a powerful rule: distribute protein evenly throughout the day, not all at dinner. Older adults who evenly spread their protein intake, 30-35 g per meal, built 25% more lean mass over 12 weeks compared to those who ate most of it at night. Source: nutrients. So structure your day like this: breakfast, eggs, soy, yogurt, or protein smoothie. Lunch: chicken, salmon, or lentils, paw, olive oil, vegetables. Dinner: grass-fed beef or tofu, sweet potato, avocado. And this is crucial. Combine each meal with resistance movement. Even 10 minutes of walking or light exercise post-meal amplifies muscle uptake by improving insulin sensitivity. The best foods to rebuild muscle after. Here's your short list: what to eat more of. Offang, wild fish, salmon, sardines, tuna. Omega-3s activate mTOR safely and reduce muscle inflammation. Eggs and egg yolks, complete protein with vital choline for nerve muscle function. Toes, cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, slow digesting protein, excellent pre-bed snack. Fructose and grass-fed meats and poultry, rich in creatine and carnitine for muscle energy. Some lentils, quinoa, and tempeh, plant-based options with fiber to stabilize insulin. RBIs, olive oil and avocado, healthy fats for hormone support and anti-inflammatory balance. The power of metabolic stacking. Now here's where it all connects. When you combine fasting, resistance training, and protein timing, you activate your body's built-in growth system. Think of it like stacking dominoes in the right sequence. Fasting lowers insulin and clears old, damaged cells. Resistance exercise turns on the mTOR growth switch. Protein intake, especially leucine-rich foods, provides the building block. The result: your body rebuilds stronger, leaner, and younger at the cellular level without needing drugs or supplements. Let me leave you with this visual. Every meal is an opportunity to either feed your muscle or feed your inflammation. Choose real foods, eat with rhythm, and let your hormones do the rest. If this kind of science-backed, practical guidance resonates with you, tap that like button and subscribe. We share videos every week to help you build strength, energy, and longevity naturally. Let's bring this all home. You've just learned that muscle loss after 60, what doctors call sarcopenia, isn't an inevitable part of aging. It's a message from your body saying, feed me correctly, challenge me wisely, let me recover. Here's what's really going on inside. When insulin resistance, low-grade inflammation, and anabolic resistance collide, your muscle tissue stops responding to normal signals. It's not that your body can't build muscle anymore. It's that it's not getting the right instructions. And those instructions come from your daily choices: what you eat, when you move, how you sleep, and how you manage stress. Let's quickly recap the key takeaways. Avoid inflammatory cheeses and ultra-processed dairy. They spike insulin, raise inflammation, and send your metabolism into storage mode. Choose real high-quality proteins like eggs, Greek yogurt, wild fish, and grass-fed meats, spaced evenly across your day. 3 lift weights or use resistance bands 3-4 times per week. Muscles need tension to stay alive. It's that simple. 4, prioritize sleep and recovery. That's when growth hormone and testosterone do their magic. 5, manage cortisol and stress like you manage your diet. If your stress stays high, your muscle building hormones stay low. 6, stack your strategies, fasting, pie resistance, protein timing, gain maximum results. Each of these steps may seem small, but together they form a biological compound effect. Your metabolism, hormones, and mitochondria all start communicating again. Here's the bigger picture. Muscle isn't just about looking strong, it's the engine of your longevity. It protects your bones, balances your blood sugar, burns fat, and keeps your brain sharp through better glucose utilization. In fact, research from Harvard Health 2024 showed that older adults with higher muscle mass had up to 40% lower risk of developing chronic diseases like diabetes, dementia, and cardiovascular disease. So when you build muscle, you're not just shaping your body, you're turning on your body's anti-aging system. Let me leave you with this thought. You can't control time, but you can control the rate at which your body ages. Every meal, every workout, every night of good sleep. It's a vote for vitality, not decay. So start today. Replace that processed cheese with real nourishing protein. Add 1 short resistance session after breakfast. Turn off your screens 30 minutes earlier tonight. These aren't small choices. They're powerful instructions to your biology. If this added value, give the video a thumbs up. It truly helps the message reach more people who need it. And if you're serious about rebuilding your metabolism and staying strong at any age, subscribe and join our community. We post every week, evidence-based, no hype, just clarity. Because aging is inevitable, but decline is optional.